Dr. Kruse, welcome back to Bulwarg Disclosure Podcast. How you doing?
Pretty good, thanks.
Good to have you back. We haven't talked for I think it was about 4 months ago that you were on last, and I think back then I asked you what you thought about Trump and kind of leading us into a conflict with Iran that was kind of looming in the future horizon back then, and ultimately I guess we kind of avoided it, but we did really have essentially a 12-day war between Iran and Israel, with the U.S. obviously funding much of their arms, and even Ted Cruz kind of tacitly admitting it in a podcast. What do you think about where we're at with that situation and how things have progressed since we talked last?
Uh, with regards to Iran, uh, I think pretty much everything Israel says about Iran, Israel does. They're the ones that are the real problem. And, the United States caters to them. So, from that standpoint, um, I don't think much has changed, to be quite frank with you. I think it's become blatantly obvious in that time frame that Israel and Trump are conflated. I think there's a lot of talk right now about Trump and the Epstein stuff.
Hmm.
He's really been trying to bury that stuff lately.
Yeah.
Um, I actually think that's a nothing burger too. I think the bigger
Explain
thing with
what you mean by that Trump is not implicated in them.
I mean, everybody knows he was implicated in it, but I mean, if there was something really bad out about it, we would kind of already know about it. I mean, we
Sure.
know that Bobby Kennedy was on the list too.
Hmm.
We know that Bobby Kennedy's wife was on the plane as well. I think the bigger news when it comes to politics is that Israel has way too much influence. They need anybody who's a dual passport person needs to be out, and I think the last 4 months, what we've seen is Susie Wiles and Stephanie Spear have been implicated as the amber throwers around Bobby Kennedy blocking things in Maha. And a lot of people, I think, are a little bit surprised, at least on the Stephanie Spear side. But, she just got rid of Flick. She got rid of a guy named Gray Delaney. These people were really good people. She's been around Bobby Kennedy for a really long time on the environmental side, but most people don't know that she's a dual passport citizen. She's also an Israeli, and she has family members that work in the IDF. And I don't think a lot of people know that. And I don't think people understand that she's very well aware of what Israel is holding over Bobby's head.
Hmm.
I think that's a bigger deal than what's going on with Trump. I just think because Trump is the president, it gets more play. But do I think that's having a bigger implication on policy in Maha than anything Trump's doing? And if anything, if you've listened to any of my recent podcasts, I've actually said I got out of Trump what I expected with my vote. He released Ross. He's pushing ahead with Bitcoin. He is doing most of the things that I want in terms of freedom on the banking side. He's holding the feet of the fire to the Fed. And this is the irony that I think a lot of people keep forgetting. The Fed is a corporation that's owned by families that are filled with these APAC Israeli linked people. But Trump is pushing pretty hard. I mean, most people who are in the know that the Fed chairman is basically propped up by Rockefeller and Rothschild.
Hmm.
So when you understand that story goes all the way back to Jekyll Island, these are the same people, meaning the Zionists, that got Trump into New York. I think it's remarkable what Trump's doing, and how he's coming out against Powell. I know a lot of people um, see it otherwise, but he's a one-term president. He's doing the things that I expect him to do. He's getting rid of immigrants. He's doing it in fashion. All this nonsense about what's going on with DC recently. I think this is all just bullshit from the Democrat side. If I was going to levy any big complaints Trump's way,
Mhm.
I don't like Cash. I don't like Bondi. I think they should both be fired. I think more needs to be done there, but I understand Trump's major pick was my guy, my former congressman, Matt Gaetz. But Matt Gaetz had a lot of skeletons in the closet, but he would have been the perfect guy to go after the rhinos because he knows where the bodies are buried, because he did some body burying himself.
Yeah, I think there was that clip of him recently talking about having being on a trip maybe in Israel and coming home and there being I don't know if it was a Mossad guy or somebody hiding in his hotel room, just a story. And I remember a couple days ago, I don't know if it was Jerusalem Post or Times of Israel, but they put out something that almost sounded like a pretty blatant threat, saying that the reason this Epstein stuff is really coming back to haunt Trump right now is because he didn't go as far or give Israel as far of a reign as they wanted to go in their conflict with Iran.
Well, I mean, and I think that's the way it should be because let's face it, Israel should fight its own battles. And like I said, I think every bomb and criticism that's been lobbed at Iran,
Hmm.
Israel's far worse.
Hmm.
It's not even close. I mean, and let's face it, it goes back to some of the stuff you and I talked about the first two podcasts.
Right.
The Dimona effect and the Apollo
Yep.
affair. They got the bomb and they helped kill one of our presidents to get it. And they want to make sure that they keep the bomb. They're the only ones that have it. To be honest, and this may ruffle some feathers on your podcast. I'd be okay if Iran got a bomb. I think.
I think if everybody else has them, isn't that the whole point? Mutually assured destruction. Why does
Oh, I
Israel
think.
get one and not Iran?
I think it's a little bit different. I think it would definitely change some of the radical politics.
Hmm.
If you actually really think about what's going on in Israel now, the Gaza genocide is the only thing that's really saved Netanyahu's neck.
Hmm.
Otherwise, his own people likely would have put him in prison because they know he's a fucking criminal.
Right.
He's broken some of the laws there, but because he has now these emergency war powers, that's saved off some of the issues. And, I think you're seeing even in Israel, there's the people who are truly Jewish, Judaism, and not Zionists.
Hmm.
They're not very happy about some of the stuff that's going on in Gaza. It's really painted their country a bad way, but that's what the Zionists do. They're Fabians, you know. Like I always like to say, Zionists, either American or Israeli, are basically British imperialists in drag. And once you understand that, that's really what the genesis and I should say the genocide in Gaza is all about. It's really an imperialistic move to, ethnic cleanse everybody but the Jews there. But if you know the history of this area, they haven't been able to do this since the Balfour Declaration, predominantly because most people who are Jewish didn't want to live in the desert.
Hmm.
That's the truth.
Hmm.
That's the basis of the transfer agreement. And it's even the basis of why American Zionism actually was built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And, some of those people, the American Zionists, those are the ones that really, helped Trump get into real estate. But I think Trump's under no illusion that the faction of those folks, they're bad for his business. They may have gotten him elected, they may have gotten him in with their money, but they weren't the key piece. The key piece was the Maha Moms and probably the Bitcoiners. The Bitcoiners, I think, out of everybody, are the most happy group. The only thing they're not happy about is that some of the shit coins have gotten thrown in to the axe. If you look at the axe that he just passed, I've got some issues with that. But do I also see that the foundation is set for some of the things that I want to see? Unfortunately, that future will be littered with shit coins. It will be littered with stable coins. I think stable coins will be the way in which Lutnick, Fink, and a lot of the Zionists that are tied to this will try to steal people's coins. I got a big time pushback. I don't know if you saw it. When I was in Prague, I did a podcast with a guy named Bitcoin Archie, It just came out a couple of days ago. But one of the things I spent a lot of time talking about in there, and I was a little cryptic about it because I knew I was going on stage with Saylor in a couple of days, that I'm really not a fan of Saylor anymore. Not because I think he's a bad guy. It's just because I think he's now an asset of the US government. And if you know anything about making markets, you have to have about 1 million Bitcoin to make the market. So before Trump can do the things that he's looking at doing, Lutnick and Fink and the rest, they're going to have to control a large stable of coins to make this happen. They're going to use stable coins as the measure. That's probably how the money printer will be turned on, because they'll use U.S. treasuries to back this. But they need a large segment of this Bitcoin, and I do believe that Saylor will be paid back somewhere down the road. I don't know who else is involved. I would hope that Jack Mallers isn't involved with his company, but it won't surprise me if they are, because they're all getting, promises on the back end. If you help us do this and get Bitcoin in, and I think Saylor and Mallers may be looking at this going, look, if we can facilitate, Bitcoin into the United States universe, ultimately that's a good deal. But you have to realize when you make a deal with the devil, there's always collateral effects, the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And what are those collateral effects? They're probably for guys, most of your friends, who are no coiners that don't really understand why Bitcoin is the biggest story truly out in the United States. Why? This is another thing I'll ruffle some feathers. If you really want to fix Maha, you got to fix the money. So if you actually get Bitcoin in, backed by U.S. treasuries, all the shit that's going on with Big Pharma gets disintermediated. Why? Because let's face it, who has the biggest Cantillon effect in the world? It's Big Pharma through the bankers. So if you actually limit fiat's power and truly have Bitcoin backing all this, just by extension from the Cantillon effect, Big Pharma will be weakened 20, 30, 40%. That's far more than even Bobby could do. Even if Susie Wiles and Stephanie Spear let him run wild, and do all the things he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And I know that is a little bit of a 4D chess concept, for some people, but I have to tell you, I'm already past a lot of the stuff that I was upset with probably the last 2 times we talked, because I can see the monopoly game developing. In other words, I'm watching it unfold. I think I understand where we're going. I think some of the people in the crypto space that think these acts that they passed were good, or they're psychotic. They're not really good for America. But ultimately, the number one thing that has to come out of this presidency is Bitcoin has to back the U.S. Treasury market. If that happens, Trump will go down as one of the greatest presidents in America. Why? Because he basically extends the hegemony for fiat for at least another 50 to 100 years. And there is a significant chance, I'm not saying huge, we're not talking 70, 80, 90%, but I would put the chance at 25 to 50% that actually we could pay off our debt if we do it this way. Specifically, if we turn the money printer on at the same time with stable coins and U.S. Treasury market to actually buy Bitcoin. And if the United States government could get, above Saylor stack, this would be significant. Why? Because you would effectively have a Bretton Woods moment. And it would be a Bretton Woods moment that wasn't tied to the criminals from 1913 and all the elite banker families.
But I feel like I have a huge problem with this being in the hands of people that are certainly tied to that. I mean, Lutnick was Epstein's next door neighbor.
You have to be concerned. You have to look. I'm not.
That's what I'm saying.
You have to be concerned, but you have to realize it's the devil versus the new devil. And could the new devil be worse? Yeah. I mean, I will tell you, I'm concerned about the technocrats because that's really who the bankers are fighting against.
My biggest concern too.
And the technocrats do have some unbelievable power with technology. But I will tell you, power with technology, especially if you have money, can be turned off. And you can actually navigate the world very safely. So you got to remember what the technocrats can do. They can control us a variety of different ways when you're traveling and doing the things they want you to do. But there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be able to opt out of those systems. And those are the people, in my opinion, that are going to wage the next American Revolution on the people you and I are worried about now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I believe we are going to have an American Revolution, but I think that revolution is going to happen maybe 25 to 50 years in the future. And this is the one thing about Maha that does concern me, because the people that are in power now, which are the banking elites and big pharma, they are harming our children. Some of those children would be the people they'd have to fight against. So I think some of the people that are going to have to fight in the future, they're going to be very wealthy. And that means they're going to hire people as mercenaries to fight the power in DC. But I don't know if it's going to be a kinetic war. I actually think it's going to be a different type of war than we've ever faced.
Sure.
But it's going to be, how shall I say, an electromagnetic, technocratic war that's
already happening on us, on the public.
Right. Well, it's one way right now, but I don't think it's going to go the other way. And I think that the future of technology, and I'm talking about for the savages out there, we're going to have an equal footing on the type of weaponry that we can bring to bear. And we'll actually be able to really affect infrastructure in the United States to bring the government to its knees. The state doesn't see, I think, this power play, but this reminds me very much of why the King of England didn't understand how farmers could put their pitchforks down and use a musket and basically use terrorist warfare against, people marching around in red coats and banging drums and hanging flags. I think the same exact idea will develop. And the reason I'm pretty positive about this will be after my life, but it's probably going to be my kids' generation and your generation. I think people have been pushed around enough where they're pissed off. Everybody's pretty mad. I don't think, if you looked on the left and the right, everybody's got a beef. And the beef ultimately comes down to who the federal government is. And I think everybody is now coming to the realization that it doesn't matter if it's right or left it's in. It's the same fucking wingnut. They do the same thing, and the only difference is the flavor of the shit sandwich they're trying to feed us. But I think we're starting to wise up. And I think when you fix the money, and this is why I give Trump credit, this is the first step in that American Revolution. And you have to take apart the creature of Jekyll Island first and foremost to begin that healing process. Why? All the things that you talked about with me in the first podcast when I told you that Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, their initial diagnosis in the Federalist Papers was right, that the bankers are the source of our problem. That's the devil we now know. The devil we don't know that you and I are worried about right now, technically, they're on our side. But they will be the devil that we have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. I just don't think we have 25 or 50 years to wait. I think if it's going to happen, it has to happen now, because they have been laying the groundwork for this, Palantir and total information awareness and the surveillance state. Like if something doesn't happen now, I think we're pretty much going to have our wings clipped to the point that nothing short of, an army of 100,000 Ted Kaczynskis out there will be able to turn it around.
I disagree. I'm telling you, there's things going on in nature right now, and also DARPA knows about this magnetic excursion that's happening, the movement of poles and all that. I got news for you. Nature always has a way of leveling the playing field. And I got news for you. When you have a heavy reliance on tech, we get even a small solar flare, it's going to have a huge effect on Palantir. And I can tell you, that's the whole reason why Elon Musk is a big part of DARPA and a big part of their plan. Why? Because they're looking to shield some of their technology in places in space where they won't get hit. If you really want to understand why the moon and why Mars is really a geopolitical target, I'm going to tell you it has a lot to do with an X-class flare. Why? If you can move critical infrastructure and servers to another place where it's protected, if the Earth gets hit, you have a backup system. Right now, there's no backup system. And that's actually what the technocrats really need. So that's why I told you the last time I was on that in my view, that Lee Harvey Oswald is Elon Musk. It's the modern day Musk. He's a useful idiot right now until they can get their USB drive either on the moon or on Mars or in both places. Mm-hmm. Because let's face it, if you can reboot from a place that wasn't hit, then you're good to go. And if you understand planetary dynamics as well as the satellite, it's almost physically impossible to get 3 celestial bodies hit by the same flare. If that was to happen, then we would have truly an extinction level event, on the order of what we saw in the early solar system. And then let's face it, then it doesn't fucking matter at all.
Right.
So I think what they're planning for is just like we used to do in the 50s and 60s when we planned for nuclear annihilation. Even in nuclear annihilation, there was plans after that, like how could the world go on? And I think that's really what's going on right now, that those plans are being worked out by the criminals in DC. But I have a sense that people in the future will be helped. The main help that they need right now from Trump is they need Bitcoin so they have a freedom, allodial title access point so that they're able to navigate, some of the crazy shit that we're even seeing today, with people in Europe, getting arrested for tweets, people outside, talking about their religion, going to jail. But, if you're Muslim, it's okay for you to get on a loudspeaker and call for prayers at 4 a.m. I had to face the same thing when I went to Prague. I had to fly to Asia to get to Prague because I was told by my attorney it wasn't safe for me to go to the UK, Paris, Netherlands, or Germany to be a branch point to get down to Prague. And, once you're in Eastern Europe, I was told I'd be safe because those people are already communists. There's no risk of them becoming centralized in the future. And, I have to tell you, when I was in Europe, I actually wrote a blog about when I was in Europe. I haven't released it yet, probably because I don't want to inflame any more than I've already inflamed. I think I've probably done a pretty good job of that on your own podcast, considering what I said on the first and second one. But I think it's pretty obvious, even on Twitter now, we all see what's going on in the rest of the world. And what's going on in the rest of the world isn't pretty. What's going on in our country also isn't pretty. But you have to realize that the intelligence agency, Congress, is now got their guns pointed at us. And they're this close to using the military against us.
Well, Trump deployed the National Guard yesterday in DC.
Right. Well, that's a different deal. You have to remember that's also tied to the city charter. It's been in place for a long time. And let's face it, Washington, D.C. is really, really bad. But it's bad because you have to realize the Fabians that are in the United States government, of which Washington, D.C. is controlled by, these are people that want social unrest because that leads to, one world government. That's
it's the pretext to bring in the new systems. My question with Bitcoin is, how does a technologically dependent asset like Bitcoin survive an event like a solar flare like you're talking about? Doesn't it become, unusable at that point too?
13% of the network is protected. So no, it's totally fine. And when everything is rebuilt, it still trades. In fact, I will tell you, you'll still have people trading with ledgers using, old-fashioned notebooks, to go back and forth. Why? Because people will have proof of reserves. I can tell you, there's people out there like me that we have screenshots, that are protected of what we really have.
Hmm.
That's going to be your proof of reserve. And then people will transact, because what you'll do, it'll be a barter system for a period of time until things come back. But I can tell you, like, guys like Marty Bent, me, Daniel Prince, the Bitcoiners are out there. We're going to trade with each other. Why? Because we understand what the situation is. You probably just saw one of my good buddies, Jack Dorsey, come out with a new technology that didn't make sense to a lot of normies, but that you could trade over a Bluetooth wireless
Hmm.
network. Why? Because that will be one of the first things come up after an X-class storm. So just so you understand, my friends, we're already thinking about this.
And that was on Bluetooth without any internet too. That's what made
Correct.
it special.
You don't need any internet. And that's the whole point, that Jack is thinking about this. And if you know anything about Jack, the lefties and righties that are on here will have their shit show to say about him. But I
Mhm.
would point out to you what I pointed out in Breedlow's podcast, and what I pointed out in the Bitcoin archive with Archie, is that Jack was threatened by the industrial military complex with Jason Bourne's last movie, and that's why he left. He told me 9 months before he sold Twitter, he's going to sell it to Elon Musk. And Elon Musk was the perfect guy to sell it to, because the industrial military complex needs him. They don't need Dorsey.
Did
Then
he
the
tell you this himself about the whole movie,
Yeah, I
them
know
just
I
putting that
know
out
all
there?
about everything, bro. And
Hmm.
then you have to realize what's the next key piece. You need to know that Dorsey's always been a Bitcoiner. He's never been a shitcoiner. His current company is 100% all about Bitcoin. And what's Jack's goal? You don't see Jack doing Jack Mahler's things or Michael Saylor things. You see Jack Dorsey hooking 4 people up on all the different continents, because Dorsey sees what I see. He sees a global destruction, because that's what the technocrats eventually will use to leverage their power.
Do you think
So if
Musk bought Twitter just basically to integrate it into like the surveillance state, have a
no question
database on
about it,
people?
yeah, to
Why
have a
did why did
backdoor,
Dorsey let it go if he knew that's
because
what was going to
because they
happen
asked him for a backdoor, and Dorsey said he wouldn't do it.
and he knew
So
he would die otherwise?
that's why he sold it. And that's why he started telling people, look, go other places. The latest place, is Nostr. Nostr doesn't have a backdoor. That's why he's a fan of that. Blue Sky was supposed to be the initial one, but that flew through the website, or I should say the wayside. But right now, you can see that he's still working for the same goals, because he sees it the way I see it. And I'm still very, very optimistic. Why? Because I know what Bitcoin is. It's money you can't fuck with. And I know that it's a allodial title. It's the same allodial title that all the monarchies had from, 1,000 years ago to right now. And that's the reason why they hate it. That's the reason why the bankers hate it, because it gives the common man a real footprint. And Trump is in a position to make the common man very wealthy, even if they own 100,000 Satoshis.
If
Point
they
one,
hate it so much, why would we ever trust them when they say they're going to start implementing, like you're talking about Trump and Lutnick? And so why would we ever trust that if
because
they
they're
hate it
not the
so much?
guys. They're not the guys that killed it in the crib. They had no idea. Why? Lutnick's the perfect example. Lutnick is the biggest primary broker dealer for U.S. Treasury market. What does Lutnick know right now? You were taught as a young boy that the U.S. Treasury market was infallible, it was most secure. It's now the riskiest asset on the planet. So realize that what he's the expert in is now the house of cards. So why do you think he's into Bitcoin? Because he knows that Bitcoin can strengthen the foundation of the World Trade Center that his buddies in Israel killed his brother over in Cantor Fitzgerald. So he's playing the long game.
But he's
Doesn't
part of that whole circle. His sister was on the Terramar. Edie Lutnick was on the board of directors of the Terramar project. Ghislaine Maxwell's
We
bullshit.
all know that? But what you're forgetting, my friend Noah, is that when you're on a sinking ship, okay, you got to save your fucking ass first before you get to the next, game. And right now, he's got to save his ass, because what he's the expert in is 37 trillion in debt, and we're in a debt spiral. Okay, there's no answer for this anymore. And the answer was going to be in the United States, a CBDC. That does not look. Trump 1.0, Trump 2.0 pretty much have harpooned that. So guess what? Now you're on uncharted territory. The people in Europe, they will be going digital dollar. The people in China, digital dollar. We know the BRICS are opting more for gold and will opt for Bitcoin. Why? They just have to make sure that the US government isn't Satoshi. And I think most Bitcoiners already know that, because if they weren't, they wouldn't have to use treasury companies to make the market. They would use the million coins that Satoshi still has locked up, on the blockchain. Those have never been touched. So we think those coins are burned. I think those coins are burned as well. And the really nice thing about this, we're going to be able to see the game of chess as it plays out the next 3, 4, 5 years. I think you and I, when we do podcasts in the future, maybe this third podcast, we come back and we see just how good Uncle Jack's diagnostic acumen was for this issue. But where I sit right now, I'm pretty bullish on it. And yeah, do I understand that in our lifeboat right now, Noah, that there's some unsavory characters that we don't like?
To say the least.
Yes, I do. But remember, even the rats have to save themselves when they're on the boat. And that's kind of what's happened. What happens then is, what do we do with the rats down the road when we get, to the other side of this fourth turning? Because let's face it, fiat is burning. I mean, this is like Nero watching Rome burn. And anybody who doesn't understand finance, is going to look at this podcast and think what we're talking about is hyperbole. Anybody who knows anything about financialization already knows that we're fucking bankrupt. That's the reason why there's only 7 stocks that are doing well in the market. That's the reason why Jerome Powell's not cutting rates. I mean, if he cuts rates, there's a chance we could have hyperinflation in the United States. And then guess what? Then everybody's fucked, except the Bitcoiners. That means even the rats like Lutnick die. And that's the reason why you see this big push right now. We've got to get this done. That's the reason why you had the Genius Act and the big bill passed. Why? You are correct. The time is running out, but it's running out for a different reason than you think. It's the money is failing at a faster rate than you want to know. And everybody is hoping, beyond hope, that they can get this stuff passed. I believe Trump and the Republicans will lose the midterms no matter what. So they have to do this before they get to that election. So that's the time horizon, because if they don't, I don't believe they'll be able to get this done. And then I think there's a very significant chance that the United States does get a CBDC, the United States does get UBI, and that we do have one world government. And then all of you are not on the ark. The only people that'll be on the ark are the people that own Bitcoin. You'll be coming to kill Bitcoiners, because we'll be the haves. You'll be the have-nots.
What is the part of the...
That number is very, very different. That makes up maybe 0.1% of the world's population. If you think Jeff Bezos is elite right now, Bitcoiners will be extremely elite. Much more elite than Bezos, Gates, Warren Buffett. And believe it or not, there's some Bitcoiners out there that truly do hope this happens. I'm not one of them. I think we need to have the normies understand now. I don't even care if you just buy, a fraction of one coin. That could be enough for generational wealth for the rest of your family's lives.
What happens if they just use Bitcoin as the designated CBDC to bring that in? I mean,
that would be fine too, because you have to remember, all it would be in that vernacular is an acronym. A CBDC is a method of control. Bitcoin you can control. That's the whole point of the algorithm and how it's based. And that's the cool part. The only thing that a government can really do at this point to try to control Bitcoin, and it's futile because they've already tried, is to control on and off ramps. And, that's by taking, money out of the bank and use it to buy Bitcoin, but technically you can do that now peer to peer. That's not been stopped in Nigeria. It's not been stopped in Bulgaria. It's not been stopped in Russia. I mean, when China outlawed Bitcoin, people were still fucking mining Bitcoin in China. So it's already got 15 years of proof that even the most authoritarian governments in the world um, have been mining it. And if you really want to know the truth, Noah, I said this on another podcast, but it wasn't well received. If you really want to know what the Israeli-Iran war was about, what did we find when the Israelis knocked out the power grid in Iran? We found out the Bitcoin hash rate went down. So you really want to know what fucking Iran's up to? It ain't about nuclear bombs, bro. They're fucking mining shit tons of Bitcoin because guess what? They understand the game. They
When
understand
did that come out? I didn't know. I wasn't aware of that.
that came out when the Israelis bombed the big bunker that they
Mhm.
thought was a nuclear site. And
Right.
it turned out it wasn't a nuclear site. It was actually a huge mining site that the Iranian elites, the Islamists, were using to mine Bitcoin. And we saw it in the Bitcoin hash rate where it dropped down. And that kind of stunned a lot of people. So realize what the normies are told, oh, this is about nuclear weapons. Turns out it's not. Who set up Israel? Let's cut to the chase. The Israeli and American Zionists. So why the fuck do you think the hash rate dropped? Because guess what the nuclear weapon is for fucking bankers? Bitcoin. There's your answer. That's what the real game is here, but nobody sees it. And they don't want you to see it. The last thing that these people want is for normies to buy Bitcoin before they do. Because guess what? That means the normies become super elite overnight. Got it? That's the key.
Hmm. Why would Israel care about taking out do you
Plus, the
think they
bankers
actually
fucking set Israel up. What do you know about Zionists? They want to fucking run the whole game. They can't run the game of Bitcoin, dude. Bitcoin is their kryptonite. Always has been, always will be.
I think everybody knows like that the nuclear, excuses are always bullshit. There's always some other reason. It's not
Yeah, but
because
they don't
they want them to
understand
not have.
what happened. They weren't paying attention what really happened in Iran. I mean, this today, what I just told you, is discoverable. You can go back and look at the blockchain and see when the hash rate went, then go back to current events on X, tie them together, and guess what you'll find out? The same day they went after that fucking bunker is when it happened. Now you know it wasn't about nuclear weapons. So guess what? The narrative of the bullshit you believe needs to be adjusted. You need to understand there's a different game going on. The game that's really going on, it's a game of money. Okay? Money you can't fuck with money they can fuck with all the time through inflation.
Mhm.
That is the game. That's money that controls people versus money where you cannot control people. And they don't want any normies having money they cannot control because that pops their bubble.
Why do you think that they started going full steam ahead at the time they did? I mean, with October 7th and stuff, obviously we know that they have been funding Hamas. We know that they knew about that event. Like, why do you think now of all
I,
times they chose
I
to?
told you, I think it's fucking Netanyahu. Netanyahu needed something to get the Jews, the secular Jews in Israel, off his ass. Why? They were coming after him to get rid of him. They were going to throw him out of power. And let's face it, what Netanyahu is in Israel. He's a neocon. He's fucking Lindsey Graham. He's Mitch McConnell. He's Elizabeth Warren. He
I think
is,
that's what most people understand is that he's going to try to stretch this out as long as he can because he knows it's the only thing keeping him any power. But I'm trying to understand how this fits into the Bitcoin aspect that you're talking about and why it was happening now as opposed to, I don't know, 5 years ago or something.
I think I laid that out. I'm just stunned that you're not putting it together. Why did he fucking bomb this place? Because he knew that's where the fucking hash rate was buried in Iran. The last thing he wants is fucking Iran, his mortal enemy, to have fucking more Bitcoin than Israel.
So it's a dual purpose. He wants to keep his
Fuck
power and not
yeah.
be okay.
Absolutely. I mean, remember who formed Israel? Rockefeller and Rothschild. What's the main strip in Tel Aviv called? Rothschild Drive. I mean, that's the fucking banking elite of the Vatican and the monarchies. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, come on, bro. This has always come back to money. I've told you from the beginning that COVID was a compliance test for a coming economic reset. We're talking about that economic reset right now. That's what's going on. But has the normies really thought this through? I don't think so. I've tried to lay that case out, especially in Bitcoin podcasts, but even the Bitcoiners, they don't really see it. I can tell you some of the Bitcoiners I talk to that are pretty smart, when that hash rate dropped, everybody paid attention.
Mm-hmm.
They knew exactly what it meant. So that's the game. It's the game of fiat versus Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, all gold that is a lateral move to protect some of the people that are way behind in hash rate and way behind in the fiat game. And I can tell you, even those people, they're involved in Bitcoin. The Chinese are playing both sides. So are the Russians. But you've seen Putin come out and the Chinese come out recently. We're back on the Bitcoin train. Why? Because it's become very obvious to everybody that the CIA, MI6, the Mossad, U.S. Congress, the United States does not own those million coins.
Yeah, you already explained if they did, what they would be using it for now. So you've talked before that Meyer Lansky and some of the 20s and 30s and Jewish mafia and stuff, that you think a lot of the cryptocurrency or Bitcoin specifically stems from that. But I
Yeah,
view that entity as the same people who are in power right now.
right.
So
But you
how?
don't understand. You didn't listen to the lessons I try to give you and what I said to Breedlove. What I said to Breedlove was really, really accurate in this area. When he is towards the end of his life and he goes to Israel and tells him he's going to tell him the truth, he then partners.
This is Lansky you're talking about?
Yeah, Lansky in '68, he goes back and he faces the subpoena in '69. They eventually throw it out under the Nixon administration, but he goes back and tells Rothschilds and Rockefellers, that's the two Zionists in both countries,
Mm-hmm.
that I've had control of the IRS computer and I've had control of everything. And if you want to know how I can fucking break your money cartel, it's through computerization and financialization. So he said, the future for you is the CBDC. He told them the answer. But here's the problem. He also knew that it was difficult to do. And one of the interesting things about Lansky is that he knew coming out of World War II, there was something very unusual in the final peace acts. It's that the Munitions Act included cryptocurrency in it. Why? Because he was one of the few guys that knew what Turing's role really was with MI6.
Which
Turing's
was?
role, Turing's role was to keep the royal family, the Rothschilds, informed of what Hitler's moves were through Hardley Park. It wasn't breaking the Enigma codes. They were in concert together.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the reason why Turing was taken out just like Lee Harvey Oswald was. They set him up. Everybody knew he was gay from the time he was 15 years old. They set him up in a lover's tryst. They arrested him. And then what was the treatment? The treatment was exactly what they were doing to children now in pediatrician's office. Give him female hormones and turn him into a girl. That way it would ruin his cognition. He wouldn't be able to remember. So what did Turing do? He wound up killing himself. How did he do that? He did it with a cyanide-laced apple. Do you know that's how Steve Jobs got the name for Apple Computer?
Because of how Turing killed himself?
You got it.
Jesus.
So when you understand this link that Turing goes out, Turing could have uncovered the whole issue with the transfer agreement. Why? That's when King George, the Vatican, and the Nazis made their unholy alliance to basically take all the Jews, put them in Palestine. That's really what there was no final solution there. So when Lansky finds all this out, when Groves hires him at the New York Brooklyn Navy Yards,
he felt betrayed.
Right, through that guy Plotkin that I told you about on our last two podcasts, he realized that the fucking Rothschilds were involved in this. So what did he do? He started to figure out a way to break the banking cartel. He did it through computerization with the help of General Groves. Those were the UNIVAC computers that I told you about the last time that the industrial military complex used And he was able to use Promise software to stay ahead of the bankers the whole way through.
So the
So
Robert Maxwell Promise Software
you
affair
got
is wrapped up in this too somehow. Go into
absolute.
more detail about that because that's really interesting.
Well, I mean, the main thing is the way the Promise software was brought into the system. Again, innocuous. It was through case reports when people would schedule their cases in court. That's eventually where the Promise software got in, but it had a back door on it that actually would be a virus that would give all the financial data back to Lansky. So Lansky had front. The people that were front were a wife, husband team named Robinson. This all went on in the same time that all this stuff that I'm telling you with Lansky went on. This is like 67 through 73.
You think
And
that
it,
could have had anything to do with Maxwell's death?
of course it did.
That they
There's
got
no,
what they needed out of him, the back
yeah,
door, and then
and
tied up
that's
loose
the
ends?
reason. Well, not only that, Maxwell was a loose cannon in this thing because his lips were pretty wide open at that point. He knew that he was exposed and
Hmm.
he had to be taken out. That's the reason why his daughter's still in jail. Why? Because she's looked at the same way that he was. It's
Well, I
also the
saw yesterday that she got a prison transfer and she's also getting work release. I don't know if it's official yet, but um,
well
sounds like Trump's
that makes
playing real nice with her.
no, but the reason why Trump's playing real nice is because Israel doesn't want the Epstein list out. You know why? Because it uncovers all their spies. It uncovers all the people that have helped the bankers.
But
You know, that's going to be the
that's the method
clappers.
they've
That's going to
used.
be the people in the CIA. That's going to be the
Mhm.
Comeys. You're going to see fucking huge links. You're going to see links to Bobby.
Of
This is
course,
one of the things that I told you is going on in DC right now that people don't understand. Stephanie Spear, who's been the chief of staff for Bobby Kennedy for a long time,
dual
is a
citizen.
dual passport person.
Mhm.
She is fucking Bobby's handler.
But if they can't use all this blackmail, if they can't use this compromise, like you're saying, they don't want it to come out. What was the purpose of them using it this whole time? I mean, isn't that the
Because it
point?
was leverage. What do you know about Blackmail and Lansky? Lansky never was interested except one thing, controlling you. That's what he
Mhm.
did with J. Edgar Hoover. That's what the
Right.
Israelis do with these lists. That's what that their whole game is. That's exactly what Queen Victoria did. They got the idea from Queen Victoria. Okay. She was the original Tinder. Okay. You need to realize that's where all these pedo rings, everything comes from. The royal family is the most fucking whacked community you could ever imagine
Oh, I'm
because they
sure.
have absolute power. They think they can get away with it. And the bankers help facilitate all this. The same thing is true with the Catholics, the Jesuit Society. The
Mhm.
same fucking bankers are there. These people believe they have nobody above them, so they can do whatever they want.
And that's
But
why I have no trust for Trump, though, is because that's his circle. Roy Cohn and
yeah, but
Meyer
you shouldn't
Lansky and these
trust
people
them.
taught him. They taught him everything that he
Well,
knows, you know?
you want to know another link between Roy Cohn that you may not realize? Who is this fucking intern? RFK Senior. Did you know that?
Didn't.
Well, there you go. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, that everybody is dirty to a degree, but it's really about the dirt they have on you. And this
Mhm.
is done to keep the banking elite in power.
Well, that couldn't be any more obvious. I mean, RFK Jr.'s out there bending the knee and waving the flag of the people that killed, you know, half of his lineage over the
Well,
past
right,
30
because
years.
they have huge. I mean, let's face it, the Kennedys are not too difficult to blackmail. I mean, they've got a lot in their life, and I mean, Bobby Kennedy, Jr. does too. He used to be an alcoholic and drug addict,
Mhm.
and we know what the leverage is. I mean, he's got a very unusual situation going on. Amaryllis Fox, know that Amaryllis Fox used to be a CIA asset. She's married to his uh his son, but the rumor running around DC right now is that Bobby Kennedy fathered the baby with Amaryllis, not Bobby's son. That's what they're holding over his head. And apparently Bobby's son doesn't know this.
I
So
think it's
that's
funny that all this stuff, all this talk about who's a Fed, who's a controlled opposition and stuff in the media that used to be very fringe conspiracy talk is now mainstreamed. And over the past few weeks, we've have all these assholes like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, people who are very clearly part of the establishment, with Tucker with his CIA dad and everything, And they're trying to make all these accusations to everybody else that they're feds and spooks and shouldn't be trusted and stuff.
Well,
I
just
mean,
look at some of the stuff I told you in the beginning with what I did with Danny Jones and Callie Means. I mean,
what
hasn't
about
that
like
come up?
Danny Jones? Don't you think he's a spook? Don't you think he's just out there to
I just
guide the
think
narratives?
he's a
A
guy like you
useful
that
idiot?
just I think he's a guy like you that has a podcast, but all of his sponsors are Jewish Zionists. That's what I think.
Hmm.
That's what I've always thought. But I think one of the things that podcast unleashed is people got to see my diagnostic acumen on display, where I called it out before anybody saw it. And now, look, you just saw Callie Means' former boss come out on Twitter and basically tell you what I said. He wasn't even a fucking lobbyist. He
Hmm.
worked for fucking Susie Wiles people in Big Pharma. I told you that in the beginning. He never worked for Coca-Cola. He was never a lobbyist. He's always a CFR Fabian. His sister's even worse. Now his sister's new husband has been outed as a fucking left-wing, you know, Rockefeller, crazy person, that's tied into gender transformation. So it explains why, Grady Means, wrote Felix the Flamingo. Her freaking new husband is doing the same kind of shit. He's a woke liberal. So what are people not seeing? I'm just going to tell you. Noah, this stuff is all bullshit. This is all like fucking Circus Maximus. The bottom line is once you make the diagnosis, once you've been proven correct, the next thing you got to ask is, okay, how the fuck do I protect myself and my family? I'm trying to tell you the answer. You got to own Bitcoin. I don't give a fuck how much you own, but you got to own it. And when the shit hits the fan, because it's gonna, then you'll be okay. But if you're worrying about the shit show that's going on in DC, or the shit show that's going on in the city of London, or the shit show that's going on in Israel, dude, you got your eye on the wrong prize. You're going to shoot the wrong evil fucking rat. The most evil rat still remains the fucking bankers, because they're the ones that have propped this whole fucking system up since 1913. That's the real game here. And I can tell you, Trump is going to great lengths to give those guys a lot of problems. And that's the reason why he's going hard after Powell. I mean, he's really going after Powell. And a lot of people don't understand it, but Trump gets the game. Trump, you gotta remember, Trump's 80 years old, bro. He's out of this. His kids are out. What do you notice about all his kids? They're fucking talking Bitcoin up more than he is. His fucking youngest son, Barron Trump, is looked at as a Bitcoin genius. He's been buying Bitcoin, since he's a little kid. So that should tell you something. And he's told people, he goes, don't listen to my dad about the crypto stuff. Pay attention to Bitcoin. You should pay more attention to what his kids are doing than what he's doing, because he doesn't understand Bitcoin like they do. But guess what? He understands that the fiat empire goes. And when the fiat empire goes, that also means real estate is a real dangerous place to be. And that is Trump's game.
Right.
Trump understands that. His family is moving those assets into money you can't fuck with.
So then
That's
that would
actively
explain
what's
why
going on.
doesn't that explain why he's getting in bed with the Vance, Teal, Alex Karp people, because the new
No
capital is
question
going to
about it.
be surveyed. But that is against our interests, but probably more than anything else that he's
Well,
done.
that's going to be our next enemy. That's going to be what the American Revolution 2.0 has fought. We're going
That's
to
how they
fight.
plan to try to stifle the revolution, is through Palantir and through all the stuff that,
Right.
Trump is
They
letting
think they
in through
can.
Vance.
Well, they think they can do it, but I'm going to tell you, I believe otherwise. And, I know you're a skeptic on this. That's fine. But like I said, every so often we sit down and chat and we see how things
Hmm.
unfold and we go from there.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely a skeptic on it, and I think that I think people should be way more pissed off than they are. And I
Well,
think this
you and
revolution
I agree
we don't have
100%
10
on.
years to wait. I think it needs to happen fucking tomorrow or
Yeah,
yesterday.
I agree with you on that, but I have to tell you, I think America has been so dumbed down. They are looking at the wrong things. They're shooting at ghosts and shadows.
No doubt about it.
It's only about money, my friend. And when you realize that, and you hear the acronym that hardcore OG Bitcoiners always say, "Fix the money, fix the world." You
Hmm.
may not understand that, but you'll go back and say, it's pretty remarkable that this group of people have been saying that over and over and over again. And guess what? They're the ones that have been most right about this whole situation. When you go back and look over 15 years, Bitcoin is the best performing asset in the world. It's not Nvidia. It's not a fucking AI stock. It's not anything else, bro. It's Bitcoin. And Bitcoin has done this in the face of the US federal government fucking coming after it, Russia coming after it, the Chinese coming after it. Every fucking totalitarian asshole government out there has tried to fucking stop Bitcoin. And I got news for you. What we say, TikTok next block. Let's go. So it's about time that some of your friends, some of the people that you play music for, they get off their asses and get off of zero. They need to go out and buy some Bitcoin. I don't care how much you buy. You buy what you can afford, but make sure when you're finished with this podcast, you're off zero. Because if you do that, then the next time you and I talk, then I think we'll have probably something more interesting to talk about, especially on this front, because I think you'll see the developing shit show have more data that will show you whether you're right or I'm right.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with you either. My skepticism in Bitcoin doesn't keep me from buying it consistently. I think that you like you said, it has been the best investment over it's only going to keep going up. But I want to understand better what your ideal outcome is of Bitcoin and how it actually overthrows, the Fed, how it's integrated
I,
into the government. Is it
I'm gonna I'm gonna
what
be
is
honest with you. How I see it is probably not how most Bitcoiners see it, but I eventually think that Bitcoin not only will be a store of value, but I think it's going to be our monetary system, meaning it's going to replace the dollar system completely. But I think that's a 50-year window down the road, and I do believe that that true patriots will fight over that battle,
Mhm.
and they will win. They will win, and they will win going away. Why? Because you need to understand the people that are protecting these elites, they're going to be on our side, not on their side.
Mhm. Mhm. All right. All right. Well, all we can do is wait and buy and hold out. So, I mean, let's stay in touch and connect again here sometime down the road. But it's good talking to you again, Doctor, and appreciate it as always.
All right, take care.
Thanks a lot,
Make
man.
some good music, man.
We'll do. We'll do.
All right, take
Bye
care.
bye.
Bye bye.